How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Mentor Monday. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving this past week. It was really amazing to be able to take a couple of days away from everything, all the distractions and everything else, and I know be with my family, which was amazing. Hey, welcome back after the holiday. We've got some great weeks ahead of us before the end of the year. This is, I know it seems unusual, but Thanksgiving, post Thanksgiving, November and even December are amazing business months for coaches. And it's our last real opportunity to knock this training and certification out of the way. And on top of that, get our businesses up and going before January begins. This is Mentor Monday. Mentor Monday is your weekly microdose of encouragement, inspiration, and miracle grow on your potential as a coach. If you would jump inside the chat, let us know that you are here. I know it's kind of a sleepy day on Monday. When my daughter had come home from school, I was like, "Hey, what percentage of kids were actually back at school today?" And she was like, "There was a lot of kids out." Sometimes people try to take that little extra day or whatever. So I know that Monday's kind of a sleepy day after Thanksgiving. People are still eating turkey a couple of days later. They still got a lot of tryptophan going on, but I'm so appreciative that you are here. So say hello to us. Do me a huge favor. Like this post and share it. It tells Facebook and YouTube that we are doing a good job. And let me say hello to a couple of people saying hello to me. Joan in Bakersfield, Kelly, who's joining us from Prescott, Arizona. And but keep those comments coming in. Let us know that you are here, and tell us where you are joining us from. Also, Mondays are never fluff. We always try really, really hard to serve you really well with Mondays. So if you would jump in to that, see that little thing that says like the like button, like it, or you can love it, whatever. But again, that tells Facebook and YouTube that we're doing a good job. So if you like these and you're getting benefit from them, then we would greatly, greatly appreciate that. So let's jump in though. Let me say hello to a couple more people. Americo, who's saying hello to me over here. All right. So, what are we talking about? Well, in the last couple of weeks, we've been in this new series called Mapping the Journey of Your Coaching Clients. And what we're doing is we're talking about what are we doing in the very beginning when we talked about intake, we talked about what you do even before working with a client in terms of figuring out what is that starting point. And what I want to do as we're going through this is to take this piece by piece as you're thinking about working and beginning with a client and what should those initial steps be. Now, some of these things I do talk about inside of our even in the mini course, but we talk about this in the life coach certification course. Also, we do that in One Day Accelerator. Also, we talk about the exact same thing in Bootcamp because it is all the same content. But what I'm able to do over the next few weeks is actually unpack some of those things that we kind of talk about even at a high level. One of those big ones that we talk about is motivation. And that when we begin with clients, one of the things that I'm really, really big on is our coaches understanding what buy in is, looking for commitment from our clients on the front end. And then in that, I always say in our training, the motivation for change is more important than knowing what or how to change. That's counterintuitive. I know in the world, everybody kind of thinks, oh, if you know what to change, if you know how to change, then that's actually what's keeping people from moving forward. But it's not. It's actually buy in, that initial commitment to doing something. But once you start working with someone, what we need is to enable us to continue to keep them engaged and keep them motivated. There's really three aspects of motivation. We talked about one of them last week. We're talking about the next two this week and next week. So I was kind of like parking on the side for a second to really explore motivation. The One of the things that we talked about in terms of motivation is something that is connected to a greater purpose. Another really big key to motivation that we specifically talked about last week. So next week we'll talk about purpose. Last week we talked about one of those keys to motivation being autonomy, that somebody feels like they have an empowered choice. When you feel like you're empowered, when you're making your decisions, that is a higher motivator than someone that's telling them to do something. No one really wants to be told to do something. And we know from our research, even in coaching, that people who choose their own path forward are more motivated to stay engaged with it, and their solutions actually work better than the ones that we impose on people in most relationships. Now, we're going to talk about this next factor that has to do with motivation. We're specifically talking about mastery, which is a big factor in someone actually staying motivated. But there's a challenge with the way that a lot of people actually think about mastery. And I know a lot of times people will say personal mastery or whatever. Really, what we're talking about when we're talking about mastery, if I just defined it, oh, and let me, before I jump in, if you want these slides, just text the word slides to 833-258-7547. What is that again? The slides, all of these questions and everything that I'm going to give you, you can get those downloads, but you need to text the word slides to 833-258-7547. You'll get the link. You'll just scroll down to the bottom of the page and you'll be able to get these. So when we're talking about mastery, what are we really talking about? And why does mastery actually matter? Well, mastery matters because, and first of all, what is it when we say mastery? We're saying, just simple definition, mastery is the desire to get better at something meaningful. So people, to stay in the game, they need to actually know that they're making progress. When we're working with clients, these coaches who are just doing this frou-frou coaching that is live your best life and everything else, there's nothing tangible about that. And that means that when there's nothing tangible, there's also not a real clear, meaningful goal. And so when people don't have clarity in terms of, well, what their goal is, first of all, but and where they are in relation to their goal, then they seem to lose heart along the way. I'll kind of draw a picture of it like this. If I have let me see if I can get a new canvas on here. If I have a client and they don't know where they are, let's say that this is a relationship to their goal. Here they are. This is them all fulfilled and happy and those kinds of things. But that's them in the future. Them now looks really like this, they're hopeful. They want that kind of a life. But the reality is that this person up here, well, when they think about that future person, that's somebody who thinks very differently. It's a person who acts very differently. It's a person who has accomplished, X, Y, and Z. It's a person that has different habits, all these different things. There's a lot of different aspects of that person who's completely fulfilled. Now, what will happen if you are working with someone? Well, let's say that we don't have this. If you're working with someone and they're just kind of like here, and all of that stuff is really, really vague, and they don't know, all they can still see is this future person looks a lot better than what they are today. The hardest thing for them is staying motivated because it's going to be a steady climb up there. But see, it's a vague notion for them of like, where do I actually live in relationship to that person I want to be in the future? One of the things that goals do for us in general, if we actually make things measurable and if we make things really tangible for the client, is they can see where they are in relation to that goal. So you know what they can see? They can see two things. They can see where I was. That's where I was in the past. And I can see where I am headed in the future at the same time. When I'm able to see how different that person was, when I can see progress, and granted, this person isn't here, but they are here, the result is motivation. The result is I feel really, really good about where I am today. And yes, I am not in this stage, but I'm not where I was. And I think that most people don't have it's not tangible for them in terms of that they really feel like they've made genuine progress, that they are that much different. Like if we looked at it in our lives, I think probably all of us can say is, I'm not the same person that I was 10 years ago. I'm not the same person that I was 5 years ago. I'm not the same person that I was 3 years ago. Hopefully, all of us can say that. How many of us can say, I'm not the same person that I was 6 months ago? I'm not the same person that I was 3 months ago. I'm not the same person that I was 1 month ago. And so the thing is that what happens for people, because they don't see any measurable progress, they don't see any change, when they look in the mirror, they keep seeing the same person every day. They live with themselves every day. And the people that they work around and live under the same roof with them, none of those people are saying, you are so different than you were 3 months ago. Most of them are like, they see them every day and they're not holding up a mirror to them and reflecting a change. They kind of treat them the same way. They kind of talk to them the same way. Even if that person said, man, I'm just so different, I'm thinking so different, the person that they're married to is kind of like, yeah, I don't think you're really that different. So they're not getting that kind of a validation. They're not getting affirmed in that kind of way. So what's that lead them to? It leads them to think that I'm not really making any progress in my life. And it's also kills their motivation. Truth is that everybody who's here tonight watching and whoever's watching in the future, that you've changed a lot. It's easier to see the difference from 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, maybe even a year ago. But for most of us, we don't really think that we're making much progress. This is why we need to have mastery in a way that's actually measurable for us, so that we can help our clients and we can help our clients towards transformation. Let me say hello to a couple more people really quickly. Um, Atlanta's in the house. Ezra, good to see you, Ezra. Justin joining us from Massachusetts. Good to see you, Justin. So, what are we trying to do in this entire mastery thing? Well, let me give you unpack this just a little bit more. It's not about perfection; it's about progress. When my daughters learned to walk, and I was going through some pictures and some video over the past week, and I found the picture of the first time my middle daughter pulled herself up. I literally watched her do it. And I have it on video, but then I also have pictures. Now, the funny thing about my daughter, and she's very petite these days, but back then she ate a lot, she drank everything, and we used to literally think that the thing that was keeping her from walking and pulling up was the fact that she had a lot more weight than most kids. And so trying to bring something from a sitting position when you got all of these ham hocks and everything else, we used to be like, oh, this is a reason why she's probably not walking, is that she's got 3 times the weight that other kids have to pull up. But she finally did. And I remember when I was sitting there that she used her toolbox and she whined for a second, but she wanted something out of the toy box. And so she grabs the thing and that she finally pulled herself up and got the things that she wanted. Now, here's the thing. That was her story. It took her about 15, 17 months, and then she was finally walking. I have a video of our youngest daughter. She pulled herself up probably 6 or 7 months. It was crazy. And that kid was taking steps at 10 months. And at 10 months, we have that video of her taking her first steps. Now, I'm not comparing kids. The only thing that I could say is that we don't know any kids who, in all of us, we learned to walk, and all of our children learned to walk, didn't they? Because it's normal to walk. And you know what we did to our kids is that when they were Frankensteining like this, we called it walking and we cheered it and we were like, you're walking, you're taking steps. And they were like laughing and cheering. And here's the result of what happened is that all of us learned how to walk and we Frankensteined for however long. We didn't bend at the knee. We fell a lot. We busted our heads. We fought gravity. We had all of these things. But you know that there's never been a kid who as they were going along that they were just like, it's not made for me to walk. Everybody else can walk. It's just not in me to walk. I see other people being successful, but I'm never going to be successful. No, actually, in a family, what happens is that a child looks around and says, okay, I look like my parent. I look like my siblings. They are all walking. Therefore, it's normal for me to walk. And you know what happens is that even though there's frustration and there's tears and sometimes there's scars and sometimes there's big knots, and you see these kids with big black eyes and they take major spills and they fall and everything else, there's something that happens in that dynamic all the time that usually in almost every case, a parent or a sibling sees that kid take their first step and they make the biggest deal in the world. And it is a gnarly step. It doesn't even look like a step. It is literally like, unbalanced and falling, in many cases, completely falling on the ground and busting their head. But if you think about it, all walking's falling. If you've ever thought about it, there's very few times that, unless we're standing, we have both feet on the ground. When you're walking, you always have only one foot on the ground. Sometimes when you're running, it's almost like for a second anyway, or a split second, you don't have any feet on the ground. What is walking, though? Walking is literally falling forward. It is literally for a split second being unstable, but it is falling forward. And as you get better and better at it, then it looks less Frankensteinish and it looks a lot more graceful. We've been really, really good at certain stages with children and being able to do this, but it is exactly the same principle as we are coaching people. Is that we are learning to help people go through the instability of moving from a place where they are only standing or sitting for a really, really long period. And if people want to leave this place to go somewhere else, the only access to that point means that they're going to have to go through the uncomfortability of learning to walk again. Because everything that we've ever learned in our life has been exactly that process. Everything that you've ever done. The stuff that is the comfort zone for you was a few years back, or maybe even 10 years back, was the place where you were learning to walk and you were falling forward and you didn't know what you were doing and you made some mistakes and everything else. But it's literally the place that is your comfort zone and is your strength in your life, is the place where you were falling forward some years ago. And it didn't kill you, did it? It actually became a place of strength. It became a place of confidence. It became a place of certainty. But the problem is that many cases, that place of confidence and certainty actually keeps us stuck where we're at. And they were so afraid of falling again. And we're so afraid of bumping our heads when the reality is it's just part of the process of learning all over again. See, in a coaching relationship, we're actually okay with failure. We're actually celebrating failure. We're celebrating the fact that, hey, every time you're walking, you're falling, but you're falling forward. And it's under control. And walking actually allows us to leave from this place to go on somewhere else. And so we've got to create a supportive mechanism, and we've got to actually help our clients learn to celebrate where they are and to celebrate progress, because it's not actually about perfection. It's about falling forward. It's about movement. It's about progress. Clients stay motivated when they see growth and they feel like their efforts actually matter. Now, why does all this matter? Because mastery is all about valuing the journey as much as it is a destination. When clients see themselves growing, that's what keeps them energized and it keeps them engaged. Now, what does mastery actually look like? I think it's really helpful for us to think about, what is that picture of mastery? Well, mastery, first of all, is pursuing tasks that actually push the client out of their comfort zone. Again, if people aren't taking steps, then they're not moving and they're not doing anything. Growth only happens when clients engage with tasks that feel uncomfortable or it stretches their abilities. But here's the thing, these challenges build confidence. It builds resilience in the client. and it creates a sense of accomplishment. Here's some examples of that. A client practicing public speaking despite fear of being judged. An example is learning a new skill to transition into a new career that they've always dreamed of. You know, something that's crazy, especially people who are getting a little bit older, stay in the skill sets that they're already very familiar with and they've already been certain of making money at. And for everybody to transition into something new, it typically means that there might be some skills that are transferable, but you're definitely going to have to learn something new. And I watch people get shut down when they're like, oh, well, I'm intimidated by computers, so I'm going to stay where I'm at. I'm intimidated by having to get up and speak in front of people or whatever. And so it's going to end up informing whatever they do in the future. But see, when we see these kinds of steps they're taking, or saying no to obligations that no longer serve them, even though it feels hard, this is what challenge looks like. We want to be challenging our clients, knowing that growth only happens when they are going into uncomfortable places and getting stretched. Mastery also looks like progress. It means that we've got to help our clients recognize small wins, and that small wins are forward momentum. Progress fuels motivation. Clients need to see evidence of their growth. No matter how small the growth is, that is the thing that will actually keep them engaged in the progress. So we need to celebrate wins, even incremental ones. Those small ones remind the clients that they're capable of achieving big things. Here's some examples of that. A client completing one workout after months of inactivity. You know, the thing is with clients is that the hardest thing when you're not doing anything is overcoming inertia. That activation energy to get started is that first burst is really, really hard. But it's a start. It's a start of everything, actually. So another example is breaking a daunting project into smaller steps and finishing that first step. You know, those are the hard things. You know, one of the tricks that I will often tell our coaches is when somebody is very overwhelmed about a really big goal, well, where are they? They're looking way over here and they're like, man, it's going to take so long to get there. That may take me a year to get there. It may take me 2 years. Well, we all know as we're getting older that a year or two is really nothing, right? But it doesn't feel like nothing because the only thing that they can see is all of the things that need to get done. So one of the tricks that I'll usually tell our coaches is that if when somebody's thinking about everything that needs to get done, well, sometimes what you can do is just say, "Hey, if you had 2 years to get this thing done, 3 years to get this thing done. What are 3 things that you know you'd have to get done? What are the 3 big steps that you know, if you could break it down into 3 steps?" And when they break it down into 3 steps, they don't feel under pressure because you're like, it would be this stage, this stage, this stage. Okay, cool. Now, what we can do, since we know we have those 3 big stages, is that we can break down those 3 stages over the course of 24 months or 12 months or whatever. And what ends up happening is that as you work with a client on that, we get closer and closer to truly incremental small steps. And so what ends up happening is that daunting project, all we did is, well, we know what we need to get done at certain stages. Here's what we need to have done in those first 90 days. And now we're celebrating that first step because we know that it is the key to all of those other steps. Recognizing when a client overcomes a limiting belief, when they start reframing from "I can't" to "I'll figure it out." When people say "I can't," always takes them out of the game. When somebody can say "I'll figure it out" or "How can I," that puts them in the game. But we recognize that as a step in progress. Mastery also looks like meaning. When I say meaning, what we're talking about is engaging in activities that are specifically tied to personal goals and values. most of us, for the most part, we know what a goal is. A value is just simply talking about what's most important to a client. And clients are more motivated when their actions align with what matters most to them. Without meaning, tasks feel just simply like obligations. They feel like they don't feel like opportunities. So we always want to connect actions to values. And then when you do, because you're going to do the things that what you do is you create alignment in that case. When I am doing what matters most to me, then I'm actually going to feel more fulfilled. So that's what we're trying to do in this, is that we're trying to make things actually meaningful for them. So here's some examples. A parent dedicating time to a career change so that they can spend more time with their kids. That's how we align it. Pursuing a health goal because it allows them to be active with their family. Another example is learning a skill not for external rewards, but because it aligns with their passion for growth. This is how we can break down mastery. This is what mastery looks like for people. And I want to give you some questions that actually foster growth. What's a skill or an area where you'd like to see growth? That's the first question. Here's some more questions that can foster growth. What's a recent win that shows that you're making progress? How do you want to measure improvement over time? This is really critical. Again, when we ask these kinds of questions, we are putting the client in control because, again, coaching's client centered. So remember, we talked about autonomy being so important, but also defining things needs to be helpful. We help the client define it, but it needs to be defined in their terms. Because if you're just trying to rah something based on your value system and what you think progress looks like, a lot of times it's going to be actually a disconnect. So we don't want to insult the client by rah-rahing and making something it's a big deal that doesn't really align with how they see things. So we're helping the client actually create that. What challenges excite you because they'll help you grow? How can we make your efforts feel meaningful and aligned with your goals? Now, as great as all this sounds, there are actually some barriers to mastery. And I want to talk about a couple of them, and I want to give you some questions that you can utilize with your clients that can help you overcome those barriers. And some of these, unfortunately, some of you are going to be very familiar with, and they're going to actually hit you. One really big barrier to mastery is this problem of perfectionism. It's when clients feel like they need to be perfect instead of even focusing on progress. And an example of this is someone who says, "Well, I feel like I'm failing even if I'm not the best right away." How many people do that? It's the comparison trap. I watch coaches do it all the time. Coaches are some of the biggest overachievers, and I mean that in an honoring way. Coaches are some of the biggest researchers, learners, growth kinds of people. They're always learning. They're always trying to pick up things. But here's the thing is that as much as coaches have that going for them, it doesn't fill their their heart's desire to be credible, and it doesn't create confidence. I wish the classroom and study made people feel more competent and confident, but unfortunately, it doesn't. And sometimes sometimes it does actually the opposite. Because sometimes the more that you spend in just training and learning and reading and all this other stuff, it ends up having the opposite effect. Because the more you know, the more you think that, oh, well, there's so much more to know. And how do I know that I'm competent and how I'm going to be exposed as a fraud or whatever? And the reality is that is that you probably already know more than about anybody with the niche that you're wanting to work with. You've been through it. You've faced your giants and all of these other kinds of things. The honest truth is that there is nothing that's going to actually make you feel competent and confident except actually going through and not being perfect. Because perfect is a myth, right? We're really good at telling our kids this, aren't we? We're really, really good at telling other people this and actually judging people by a different standard by which we judge than the one that we use on ourselves. And so that's a really big example. This is a really big barrier that people don't want to start until it's perfect. And there's also a big barrier of this need for instant gratification. And I like to call this microwave transformation. We want transformation and we want progress and we want to be this thing as quickly as we possibly can. We want to be at the top of our field. We want to be the best of the best and all of this other stuff. Well, here's the reality is that it takes sometimes a lifetime to be an overnight success. There is no transformation that happens in a microwave. There is no overnight transformation. There's a lot of different things that are going on. There's not overnight learning. There's not overnight growth. That doesn't really happen. But we live in a culture that loves to try to, stir up dissatisfaction and to stir up a lack of gratitude for what we have right now. And it wants what it wants now. And so the challenge of that is that, it used to be a time when people were like, well, might take me a lifetime to do this. It might take a couple of generations for our family to be able to do this. And people used to understand a concept of seed and watering and everything that needed to be done leading up to a harvest. And most people are like, well, how quickly can I get this done? How quickly can I get this done? And how quickly can I be doing whatever? And there are some that I would say seem to defy some of the odds and are able to get things done a little bit faster. Like I'll say this, I like working with impatient clients. I like working with people who are highly motivated. But I also recognize the fact that perfectionism is a thing that shuts people down all the time. And that this instant gratification thing is going to ruin people because they're not getting the results fast enough. Well, how quickly can this happen or whatever? And they're unreasonable. And you know what ends up happening is that they don't stay on point and they don't stay consistent with what really needs to get done to bear fruit on the other end. They're not interested in seed and process and harvest. They're like, I want to harvest today. Like, how do I get that? And it's unreasonable. So it ends up being a barrier to mastery. So growth takes time. Clients may lose motivation when they think that progress is feeling slow. Example of that might be a client saying, why am I not seeing results yet? It's funny to listen to people say that. And they're just like, okay, how long have you been at this? A week, 2 weeks, 2 months? So these are things, again, in the very beginning of mapping a client's journey, is that we need to be thinking about these things. We also need to be finding out what are the kinds of things that motivate them. And we need to actually have some things in place so that they see their progress, that they can embrace their progress, that they can embrace the journey along, that they can look in the mirror and they can say, man, I'm not who I was in the very beginning, but I can actually validate and affirm my own development and my own character and my own habits and all these things. So let's give you some questions for these things. First, questions for perfectionism. What's the one thing you've been holding back on because it's not perfect yet? What would happen if you just started anyway without it being perfect? What would progress look like if you allowed yourself to celebrate even the smallest wins? See, people don't give themselves the ability to celebrate and to relish even a moment. They're going to be completely unsatisfied until something's done. Now, here's the crazy thing is that if people can't be grateful and live in Thanksgiving and live in Thanksgiving, how you like it? Live in Thanksgiving and be satisfied with progress now, it is unlikely that when they finally get to this place, that they're actually going to be able to celebrate it and be satisfied then. This is another reason why we want to teach our clients this. If perfection wasn't an option, how would you define success on your terms? Again, we're empowering the client to define that. What's something you've improved recently, even by 1%, that proves you're growing? The funny thing is there used to be this um I'm trying to remember who it was. The guy who wrote The Tipping Point and some of these other books. For some reason I can see him because he's got this marvelous hair and he's brilliant. And I can't think of his name. Somebody will remember his name and throw it in the chat for you, though. But he wrote The Tipping Point, and he wrote The Outliers, and a lot of all these other books. But there was this idea of the 20,000 hour rule, and it was this concept that to get to mastery, it would take 20,000 hours. So and he used some anecdotal evidence of like the Beatles and various people who it was because they were in their craft and they were so much that this was the difference between the people who are at the very top and the top of the field and then the average Joes. And so what happens is that sometimes people see that and they're like, well, I don't want to put it. When am I going to find time to put in 20,000 hours? I'm in my 40s and we got 2 kids and I'm working full time and everything else. Like, who's got time for that? Well, here's the thing is that actually 20 hours brings people to a level of competence about like that. Instruments. You can learn to play an instrument. Yeah, you're not in mastery. You're not going to get on stage probably, unless you're a crazy prodigy. You're not going to get on stage with some well-known band or something like that and go on tour or whatever. But to get to an intermediate level is actually not that many hours. It's more like 20 minutes a day. 20 minutes a day in anything can make you quite a genius and bring you up at least to some of the top levels. Maybe you are not like the prodigy that is the first name that somebody thinks about in something, but to become great, to become a great coach, to become a proficient coach is maybe 20 minutes a day. This isn't like 30 years of your life. It's probably like to get to proficiency, to actually be a great coach. I want to encourage all of you. It's about 20 minutes a day. This is why even growth by 1% is not something to sneeze at. It's actually significant because a lot of people aren't doing anything to actually improve even 1%. How can you look at the mistakes as fuel for growth instead of evidence for failure? So we're always trying to take that fear. Oh, yes, I knew somebody would know. It's Malcolm Gladwell, and it's 10,000 hours to mastery. How you like that? But it's 20 minutes a day just to be good. Here's these questions for instant gratification. What's one measurable result you've already achieved, no matter how small, that proves you are moving forward? We've got to help our clients reframe and change the lenses. Any movement forward is something to celebrate and to start to recognize. Well, I haven't gotten anywhere. I haven't gotten anything accomplished or whatever. Is that really true? We need to push back on those kinds of things. It's easy for people to say that. What's a challenge you overcame in the past that required time and persistence? We need them to actually think about what their past victories were. Resistance is what actually creates growth. If you think about in your life, the things that you know the most about, the reason why you know so much about it is that you probably had a war. You had a battle that you went through during that time. You had to learn something that you never knew. Sometimes it was because the greatest obstacle in your life that you ever faced caused you to have to research and find out stuff that nobody else knew about. And now you're kind of like a semi-expert in those kinds of things. See, it was a challenge that required time and persistence and perseverance. It's actually the things that gave us the greatest strength in our life. It wasn't something that you just read a post online and then all of a sudden it became your strength. That's just not the way that it ever worked. And so we got to help our clients not think in this realm of just simple instant gratification, because if we're honest, all of our growth came through a process, came through pressure. If you could turn waiting into learning, what would you focus on improving right now? Let's turn our focus on what can be learned and what can be changed and what can be given. I like to think about it like this. If there was one thing that you did that could have the greatest impact and move you forward, maybe that's what we're focusing on learning first. What is that first thing? What part of the process could you fall in love with if you gave yourself permission to enjoy it? Man, if you can get them to love the process, they're going to stay engaged in it. Hey, if you want slides Text the word slides to 833-258-7547, and you'll be able to download them right there. Now, let's pay the bills really quick. December 13th through 15th is our next boot camp weekend. It is the last boot camp of 2024. What do we do in boot camp? Well, it is a 3-day weekend certification. We cram it all in. We cram our entire life coach certification course in a live format over Zoom. We go Friday night, one session on Friday night, 3 sessions on Saturday, 3 sessions on Sunday, and you're done with all your training. You just have to complete your assignments and turn them in. What's covered? Well, it's our main content from our life coach certification course that we formatted into this weekend. 7 powerful sessions. Session 1 is Foundations of Coaching. Session 2 is the anatomy of a dynamic coaching session. 3, how to help your clients get extraordinary results. 4, how to listen on a transformational level. We have actually 2 sessions that is really focused on developing our listening skills, how to ask powerful questions, and how to establish a growing coaching practice. All of these sessions include live coaching demos as well as live Q&As over the course of the weekend. Now, what all is included? Well, besides these 7 live sessions, you're also going to get brandable templates. What we do is that we give you a welcome pack that is fully customizable for your own graphics, for your own fonts, for your own color scheme, all of that stuff. So you're going to have your coaching agreements. You're going to have all of that stuff already put together for you so that you're ready to work with clients as quickly as possible. You're also going to get a 5-tool coaching starter kit. You're also going to get hundreds of question samples. You're going to obviously earn your life coach certification and get your certificate. You're going to have replays and handouts, but you're also going to have access to bonus live Tuesday night coach training where you can come in, get your questions answered. You can still immerse yourself inside of the community. You do not have to do this thing alone, and that's why we made Tuesday night training for you. The cost of this program is only $295. Value of this weekend program is more like $3,500, $4,000. But we are the most affordable training program online. We've been in business for the last 10 years and we're fully accredited. And so that link to get enrolled is inside the details of this video. So when you go in, you can actually just open it up. If you're on Facebook, just open it up. You'll see the link. You can go over there and you can get enrolled in about 90 seconds. That is also in the description of the YouTube video that you are watching right now as well. That you can just click on the details and you can get enrolled. We would love to help you get this thing done. I know some of you have been thinking about it for a really long time and you've been procrastinating on it. Let's just get it done before the end of the year. That way you can start your business for 2025. Well, all right, everybody. Well, listen, I appreciate you guys all immensely. Have a great rest of your week and take care.